So you'll only see the data that you have access to. So, somebody else might have access to, let's say, all the supervisory orgs and all the workers in the tenant, but you only have access to the specific department. When you run the report, and let's say it's only specific to like worker information and you only have access to your uh, the specific workers in your supervisory org, that's all you're going to see. But let's say um, it wasn't like org specific. Let's say you had access to all supervisory orgs, but for some reason you weren't given access at a more granular level, let's say to contact information. If that's one of the fields in there, you might see the worker's name, but that specific field will just be blank. So then that's kind of how you know either you need to go figure out like, do I not have the right security access to see contact information? Or is it that the information was never inputted in Workday? So you just do a little troubleshooting there. All right. And as we talked about at the beginning of this course, is like everything is is an object, right? To make sure that it's actionable, and then everything is kind of tied together as related business objects. So worker, you might have key information on there, but then anything related to the position is another object, and that's how you go ahead and you can use, and we'll talk about it in a little bit, but when you're doing advanced reporting, you only can have one data source, and it can only have access to one kind of business object, but then you can hop over to um, another data source in an advanced report and look at other details that kind of tie into the worker business object. And that's what we were talking about here. And then, you know, object, you have worker, and then you have different data sources that have different report fields on them. So you can have name, date of birth, beneficiaries, dependents. And this was, again, like if you're talking about relational databases type uh, terminology, this is kind of how it ties together. And then the specific class report fields, you'll just hear CRFs. They'll just continually, whenever they're talking about these report fields, they'll just mention them as CRFs. And all that means is class report fields. And there's different types, right? So there's text, that's just plain text. Then you could have related to currency. Then you could have the Boolean. You could have numeric values. You could have date values. And then this is specifically like instances, like worker's name, maybe date of birth. They can only have one date of birth, right? But if it's something like dependents, that's one worker to many dependents. So that's what this is. And then this is recursive. And then here is the piece that we were talking about earlier, simple reports versus advanced reports. So simple reports, I don't generally see people using it. I don't really create, anytime I just go ahead and create a quick report, I just put advanced. It doesn't do, like, there's no harm in just creating an advanced report and seeing if you actually need it. But simple reports you can't share with the other users. It's just helping you do a quick test. There's very simple high-level filtering on it. You can't publish it as a web service, and hopefully we get to touch on a little bit of integrations, and you'll see why this is important to not use simple reports. And then there's no related business object field. So if you start on the worker, you're not going to be able to hop over to other business objects like the position or the role or other data that I was just showing that's related to that business object. But in an advanced report, you can go ahead, share that information or that report definition. So I don't know if I talked about it last time, but report definition, all that is kind of your configuration of the report. And then, so that's the piece that, can you go ahead and share that report definition with others as well? Once you share that report definition, they can go ahead and run the report and see the results as well. You have a lot more filtering. So you can go ahead and create prompts on the report. So let's say, you're running, let's just say a report called find workers, even though there's a delivered report, but you made some tweaks on the report and you want to use that specific report. You might not want to just pull back everyone. You might want to have a specific filter that As soon as you're running the report, it prompts you, and maybe I've chosen that what I really care about is specific date ranges. Maybe I care about like if something specifically has changed within a specific date range, only show me that information, maybe as somebody's title or something. So you can have these kind of more complex filtering to kind of help you narrow down the population that you want to look at or the results you want to see on the report. You, of course, can run the report like without any of the prompting or any of the filtering, and then you could, with the results returned, you could use the columns and stuff to do a little bit more filtering. But the prompting helps you definitely do a little bit more kind of complex logic to it. The publish as a web service, this is where you can kind of use this information um, for web services, specifically for integrations, which hopefully we'll get to see in a little bit. And then all those related business object fields, right? So if I start off on the worker name and all this stuff, but then I want more information about the position, maybe more about their dependents and stuff. And then the nice thing is because you get to tie in these related business objects, then you could also have filters on that information too. So maybe for whatever reason, anybody that has more than two dependents, I could have that as one of the filtering criteria as well. And so this, yeah, this would have been good to come to. So like the worker, I could have on my report worker last. So we'll get to talk about it, but I'll just touch on it high, like a little bit more detail. I think it'll make more sense when I talk about the EIB. But
Okay.
yeah, publish as a web service that has nothing to do with sharing, right?
Mhm.
It's just, can you access this report in an integration and use the information in an integration? But the sharing with others is just part of this advanced report. As long as I've shared the report with others, they should be able to see it. It's independent of this publish as web service. So the other piece that I was talking about is hopping to related business objects. So the thing that I was saying is, let's say I have an advanced report. It's on the worker business object. It's using one of the data sources there. And I'm pulling worker, last name, hire date. And then really what I want to know next is what is the position title? So I could get that, maybe their stock grants, and then you know, maybe I also want to see dependents. So from here, I can go to another business object and pull information. And a dependent, they can have many dependents. And now I want to pull each dependent's name, date of birth, gender, and you could go ahead and do that using an advanced report. Simple report, you would just be tied down to this this specific information, these specific CRFs on this business object. So if you want to see like business objects by category, if you're looking for some information, let's say like you want to see what categories are involved with the business objects, you could go ahead and pull this report. I generally don't go to this report, but just want to make you aware of like if you are looking for specific people and you want to see what are the different business objects, this lets you know anything that's tied to people in terms of category, what person sort of data is available in the tenant. You can look at any of these business objects. Once you drill into it, then you'll be able to see the additional CRFs that are on each of these business objects and seeing if you want to go ahead and use this. So you'll see I'm not in the tenant as much. It's just because of the access, but I made sure that I took a whole bunch of screenshots so that way I could continue talking about this topic. And another important kind of report out there that you could just go ahead and search for in that global search is Workday Standard Reports. And then this lets you know, am I going to be able to copy a report? Does it have kind of the information I already want? Or is it an espresso report? Is this like using Workday's own coding language that I won't be able to go ahead and make tweaks to? So if somebody like a functional user came to me and they were looking for a specific report, like for me to build a specific report, the first thing I'd go out and do, two things I would do, is look at Workday standard reports. Or actually, I would do another one. I would look at type custom reports into the search, global search, and see, has somebody already kind of built a similar report? Do I just need to tweak it a little bit? And then if there's nothing there, then I would come out here. So let's say they were looking for address changes, but they wanted like, maybe tied to a specific supervisory org and a specific, over here it's optional prompt, like a start and end date. They wanted that, but then they're also only looking for people maybe in Texas, let's just say. Then I would just go ahead, copy this report, tweak it further so that way it has that additional prompt, maybe by region, by location, whichever one would make sense. And then I would just go ahead, make sure that the information looks good to the functional user. And then I would just transfer ownership. And then maybe I'd also ask them, do you want this to be running on a schedule? And I could show you what that looks like. But all that means is I can go ahead and set up a schedule to say what's the run frequency on this report, and then just make sure that, I set that up as well, and then I just transfer ownership to the functional user. And let's say every Monday they want to see the information and possibly maybe even send to their email. I could go ahead, help them set it up, and then just transfer the ownership. So every Monday at the specific time they set, it'll go ahead and either they can look in the Workday tenant for that notification that, hey, this report ran at that specific time. An implementer or a Workday customer would have to build so many calculated fields, or there's just no easy way for us as customers to get at the data. Then they go ahead and build these, but they're trying to get away from it. You can't. That's the biggest limitation of this, is that you can't get at copying or tweaking.
That makes sense that they should get away with it.
Yes, yes, they are. And sometimes it's also about what is it called? I haven't used this much, but it's also about like the visual, right? Like if there's a lot of sub columns and stuff like that, that's where I feel these espresso reports come up. But the flexibility is there with Report Writer to do something similar. It's just more the views, but they are getting away from doing it. And there's other ways of getting at the data. So that's that. So here's that address change report. Let me see. I took this screenshot for a reason. I think I just wanted to show about these prompts. That's already built in. As you saw over here, it's optional. Optional prompts. But let's say, when I really want a functional user to be using this, I don't want them to be optional. I actually want this to be required. So let's say I made a copy of this report, required these prompts. So that way, when somebody's running this report, instead of getting back everything when they don't put this information in, they have to put a start and end date. So that way we get a limited amount of information that's sent back. Maybe I wanted to change the column headings, or I want to change the way the information shows up in terms of which information shows up first, or which column shows up first, or what it's being sorted by. You can go ahead and do all of that by copying the report. Of course, you can always go ahead and create your own custom report and start from scratch for whatever reason, if you wanted to do that. But best practice is always to see if there's a report already out there that you can just copy and see, run and make sure you're getting the information you want. So here's like how you would copy a standard report. You would just type in, you could type in copy standard report to custom report as a task, or you can just go ahead and as a related action, when you go there, I wonder if I have a screenshot. Let's see if I go, let me log into the tenant and just see if this person has access. Okay, so at least you can see through what I just searched. So just like I was saying, you could do copy standard reports, and then you could put in the name of the report if you already know how to do it. Usually what I end up doing is, let's say I'm already at a report and it seems like this is the report that I want to use. Let's just do one, hopefully from there. Okay, so I ran that report, standard report, and here I could go ahead and copy it. And and over here, not sure what temporary is on there. That shouldn't be on there. But I don't know, maybe some configuration thing that they did on this. I copy. Oh, it shouldn't let me save it because I have the same name. So the default, as you see, it does copy, and then it's funny, if I made a copy of the copy, it would go ahead and let then it would add another, so it would be copy, copy. So it just adds another copy to the end. So you'll have like, and so it's best to just go ahead and change it yourself to a different name. Uh, so, here's advanced. Here's all like over here. I started off at the worker business object. It's going to the beneficiary events. Here's all the information. By making that copy now, I can update the column overheading. I can take out, remove, or add other report fields. I can tie another business object. I can, sort specifically the way I want to. The one that's defaulted in here is by worker and alphabetical ascending, but let's say I wanted to use a different, um, like maybe the beneficiary event or some other data. Let's see, maybe by a date. I want to go ahead and sort that. And then the same thing that I was talking about, you have the advanced filtering. So making sure that the beneficiary is not empty. So if it's empty, it's not going to show up in here. But maybe I want to add a specific date that I'm only looking for a specific date range, like maybe look only starting um, the first Monday of the month or whatever I want to do. I can have self-filtering. Here's the prompts. This one, let's see if it has any prompts. It doesn't, but I could have it look for the specific dates rather than filtering automatically on specific dates. And then the output. The output is a table, like all the rows, but I could do chart. The bar probably won't look good because this has nothing. Like if it was more numeric stuff, the chart makes sense. Um, I can go ahead, and this is over here, it's don't share report definition, but it could be with all authorized users. So anybody that has access to report information right now, it's owned by me, but I can also transfer ownership, and I'll go ahead and show that in a minute. And then here's the advanced. So you could do a lot more things now on this advanced report that wasn't available several releases ago. And here's that enable as a web service. So once you do that, it fills in all the information. So web services, and I'll talk more about that in a little bit later, but every web service has a different version and it depends on the releases. So before Workday was release one, release two, and now they went to, and I think it last stopped in the late 20s, early 30s, and now they do it by year and the release number. So earlier in the year, like around March, for what's coming up, it's going to be 22 R1, and then sometime I believe September, October, it's release two, if I'm not mistaken. So that would be 22 R2. But the web services, they haven't changed the version number. So it's still being numeric, and every release, this should get updated. So this release, it's version 38. When the next one comes out, it's version 39. And I'll talk more about this, but this is what, when you do enable as a web service, it gives it a version name. This namespace comes in automatically, and you can use this in a custom in integrations, and I'll show you that at the end. I have to look into why this temporary report thing is enabled, but this generally is if you don't want to clutter the tenant with all these reports that you're just kind of doing kind of for testing purposes. So it just automatically deletes it depending on the date that you put in. Prism is kind of their reporting tool that kind of brings in all the different information. You could have external reporting information that's brought into Prism combined with this stuff, and it's a good way. I haven't played around with it that much, but I hear it.
What is this Prism? What is it actually?
So it's kind of a Workday tool that kind of helps you bring in all this. You get to use the data within Workday, but then also pull like Excel documents and stuff like that into Workday from other systems. That it's kind of like piecing things together like SQL tables that way and being able to see something holistically. I've seen them, um, what is it called? Demo this stuff. So it's really cool. There's a lot more capabilities and it's not, you're not just tied down to the Workday information. You can pull in and what they call ingest information from other systems into it. I haven't played, it's its own SKU. I haven't played around with it a lot, but I know some of the larger customers, when I'm on these calls with other customers, they talk about it on there. And then all it is like when you're enabling for Prism, you're basically saying, when I'm using that tool to go ahead and give me access. And the same thing with worksheets. They try to make their own kind of, and I don't know how far they've gotten with this, but their own kind of like Excel and being able to run real-time calculations on things. But there's a lot of guardrails that they put in place. It's not as performant, I think, as they want. And I'm not sure, based on another call that I was on with other customers, it didn't seem like they might be investing in it based on the roadmap that they were discussing. So we'll see. I think that they're trying out all these different tools. I feel kind of like what Google does, right? Like they test out things kind of in labs and stuff like that and see which one kind of sticks. I feel like that's what Workday is doing with some of the other tools and things just to see which one they should continue investing in. So that's about advanced. Then the other thing, so this part, I'm guessing it's the namespace it didn't like, so I'm going to take out this part. Actually, I could just do it on the namespace, so let me just do that. That error goes away. So, and then I think it's the group heading. So whenever you're doing another business object, I'm not sure why this doesn't get copied over, but you just need to put in beneficiary event. So whenever you're hopping to different business objects, it likes to make sure that you have the column headings over it. So I'm just going to say that, and that should just take care of it. So it's simple. Okay. And then the next thing that I wanted to show you is you can go ahead, what I was saying, transfer ownership. You'll just probably be sitting around here. So you can edit it after you've saved it. You can go ahead and copy it. Oh, maintain Excel template. We'll get to it. Run is you can just go ahead, run it, and then it'll give you all the values. I'll skip over this one for right now. Test is if you just want to see a couple of rows. Before they used to limit it to 10, but I'm seeing more and more like it's just variable. It's just like maybe it's dependent on like how many seconds um, they let the report run for and whatever values that it's come back with. But generally, definitely under 20. Sometimes I've seen 11, 12, that kind of stuff. Here's that transfer
Does it
ownership.
have limitations as how much data it can produce?
Sorry, say that again.
Does it have limitations as, for example, I can
Mm,
run this date range for 3 years. It doesn't
hmm
mean it's going to give me the whole 3 years worth of data. So how does it control how much data it's giving it out? It's displaying on the report.
Yeah, so I'm trying to remember. I'm sure it's somewhere on community, but the way it works is if it's taking more than like, let's say 20 seconds for it to load the data, then you get like this like message box that says notify me later. And it lets it run in the background and then it gives you a notification in your kind of where is it? Over here in your inbox that, hey, or even here, you get the notification, hey, the report that you wanted to run, now it's done. But, some people have built reports. I was one time on this gig that, they built this report and it would take more than 20 minutes and it would actually bring down the tenant because of all these weird
Yeah.
calculated fields that it was running into issues with. So that's where the test kind of helps with. But whenever you get that message to kind of notify me later, just I would say always use it because then you don't know like if you're kind of waiting there, you just don't know how long you're gonna wait. And I haven't seen a scenario where you need to see that information like right away. So when there's a large data set, so it depends on a number of factors. If you have a lot of calculated fields or a lot of hops to different business objects, then I could see the report taking a really long time. And then same thing like you said, if it's a large date range, like there's a large volume of data that it's processing through and maybe you have filtering and all this stuff. But in general, within like less than a minute, you'll see the information. If it's just a couple of seconds, if it's more than like I think 30 to 45 seconds, then you'll kind of get that spinning wheel and that thing saying, would you like this to kind of run in the background and for us to just notify you when it's done? And so whenever that pops up, that's what I usually do because I can move on to something else then in the meantime.
So how do I see now that you copied it, you cloned the other report,
Hmm
you cloned this. How do I see now what security has it inherited now? Or how do I change the security? Okay, I created this report. Now I want to change the security or see what is the security it has. How do I do that now?
So I guess like there's two ways to take your question. So the security for the data itself, that's like all the stuff that we've been talking about before. To get at the data, you would look at the domains and stuff like that. Um, and let's see. So you want to see, let's say, let's go with worker, right? You know that it's on the worker business object. Um, and and that whole security analysis for securable items, you're gonna say like who who's not being able, like usually the troubleshooting that happens is like somebody's not able to see some information on the report. I would just go to the report field and instead of typing in this, I would just do that related actions and put the information here. So let's see if it allows me based on the person that I'm logged in as. Okay, show details, right? Um, view only, all users. So all users have access to the public reporting item for worker. So There's nothing that you need to specifically view or modify. But if it was another report field, that's what I would do. I would just go in here,
But
put the go ahead.
I think, sir, I might have not explained myself. So you just cloned a report, right? The beneficiary
Mm-hmm.
information, right? Now, because you cloned it, it inherited all the ones that what was there from the original report that was there. Now, I want to change the security for that new specific report. You cloned it and only give it to certain people or only limit it to certain things. How do I go about doing that for that specific report?
Sure. So with that, it's not then at the field levels, right, that you're talking about. Then it seems like
No.
it's just for this report. Then
Yes.
that's where you would go to share, right? So this one, if anybody else searched for it, for my specific report, they wouldn't see it because I said don't share report definition. If I said that I wanted to share with a specific security group, let's say,
Mm.
like administrators, that's, I could put that here. Or let's say, it's really sensitive information. I only want it to be shared with one person. I could go ahead and just do that here. Or I could do both, right? Like benefits administrator, and I know somebody in IT really needs to see it. So you could do it that way.
Okay. Now, when I see those three radio buttons that you have there,
Hmm.
don't share report definition. What is it doing exactly?
It's basically saying I should be the only person that sees this information.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
And groups and then, but do it, so this is only specific to share with authorized users. Now, what is the difference between shared with all authorized users versus shared with specific groups and users? What is group?
So, mhm.
Go ahead.
So
Go ahead.
share with all, yeah, all authorized users. So these are all the people that should be able to write reports and see reports. So have report administrator or that report writer access. So if
So
you're
it's
only
basically like
looking,
administrators.
yes, or
Okay.
let's say you only want a specific group of administrators or anybody that deals with this beneficiary stuff. If you
Hmm.
want to even get further filtered down to a specific population, then you can.
Okay. Good.
Okay,
So
cool.
for us, we call that private and public. So
Got
that's
it.
how we did. So private means it's only for me. Public means it's
Mm,
for everybody. But then going forward, you can still customize it more to do whatever you want to do.
yes, exactly. Okay, cool. Oh, and then the last piece that I wanted to show that, um, all right. So the other one that I skipped over, the schedule, um, you could say run now. And so that's basically like the run option that we had earlier. Or you can say that you want it at a specific frequency. So run once in the future, and then you'll have to select a specific date and when and all of that stuff. So you get to do that. If I wanted to change it to a weekly or a monthly, there's a little bit more prompts that show up. The output, you can say again, like Excel, do you want it PDF? Do you want it text? How many days should this file be deleted? If it's going to be just sent as a notification in your inbox, or do not output an empty report. So there might be sometimes, right, like where you're looking for maybe benefits changes, or I don't know, like address changes, and maybe somebody hasn't taken made those changes. So then there's no point of having an empty report. Sometimes it's nice to see an empty report, knowing that hey, the schedule worked fine, the report works fine. I'm just not getting anything because there was no data. And then where do you want to share this? Since I have don't share report output, but if it's that I select this, then I could do the same thing here. So this will trump however you built the report if it's on a schedule. Um, so that's just something to note. high level about reports. So copying, we did this, and creating custom reports. Um, this is just things to think about as you're creating a report. Kind of went through it. Here are the temporary reports. See over here, like you get to select that checkbox. There must be something um, that's configured. I just have to look through in the tenant where they configured that to remove the fact that it's going to be a temporary report. Um, Okay, so the other thing is, right, like not everything is going to be the class report fields, the ones that Workday delivers. You might not just want that. You might want like a specific calculation that's done on it. Maybe it could be for the hire date or, you know, uh, getting at the data in a different way. So that's where you would leverage this create calculated field. So you could still use the worker business object, but maybe let's say the hire date, all I want to see is month and day. I don't really care for whatever, or maybe month and year, and I don't really care about the date for the information that I want over here. Um, I think that's what they did with this calculated field. And when you create a calculated field, so on here, I put business object worker, and then I'll show you what I think it's constant string or something. We'll see the function in a little bit. But basically, wherever you create that calculated field or the business object that you use, then when you go to that worker business object, you'll see those calculated fields there. It'll be part of that business object now. So anybody that wants to get at that calculated field, that specific one, they'd have to use the worker business object. So if I wanted to get at this CF formatted hire date, I would use this one, this calculated field, and the only way I'd be able to get to it is on the worker business object. So that's something to remember, that once you create a calculated field on a specific business object, using a specific business object, that's how you get to that calculated field. It'll be part of that business object now. Great. And then the thing that I was going to go over is really, there's not many times where I've used a lot. Um, I generally always seem to have somebody that I could go to for this type of stuff. But these are all the different sort of functions, and community does a great job. I sometimes use text constant, true or false, or substring text. I just keep it really high level, but you could get really, really complicated with this. And there's a lot of different functions. They used to have, I don't know if they have it anymore, but they used to have office hours because people get really, what's the word, creative to try to get at the data and do really complicated calculated fields. And they've been adding more and more to the reporting side where it makes it easy. Like if you create a really complex calculated field, like how you can step through and kind of see how it's what's the word I'm looking for? It's processing or getting at the data step by step. So that way you know where you're making um, kind of you need to update something because a lot of times it happens during testing. Everything looks good, and once it's out, and then you find like all these edge cases, and then you realize you need to go back and kind of tweak something in the calculated field. Yeah, so in general, I mean, the best practice is, you could use your implementation tenants, you could use your preview tenants, you use your sandbox tenant. Generally, what I've done is always use the sandbox tenant, right? And even when I'm helping sometimes other consultants out on other projects, it's like, did you test in sandbox, right? Because sandbox should have like, it's only usually a week or two if you've made an exception, stale data of production. So there shouldn't be like, if you've tested it, and most of the time when somebody has done something wrong in prod, it's because, they were cavalier and they just thought it should be fine, right? And they didn't test it in Sandbox. But that's generally where you would build these reports, especially with these complicated calc fields and stuff like that. You build it in there, you test it. Sometimes what I've done is I've tested it, I've made it, I've created it, and then I know it's going to get refreshed again. So I'll save screenshots and whatever else, and so then I build it again when the prod gets refreshed that week before I actually push it into like create it in prod. EIBs, and then you could take that report definition and just go ahead and uh, upload it into Workday.
Okay,
So,
that's what I want.
but yeah, but generally, I guess like I'm just more like I like to kind of everybody has their own way of doing it. It's not a wrong or right way, but generally mine aren't so complex that I can't just rebuild them and just make sure that it looks correct. Okay, so that, and then let's go to this. All this is doing is the compensation. It's coming back. So I've gone ahead and used, I don't think I screenshotted the whole thing, but using a specific field, and I'm guessing it's compensation here. And then I'm basically saying that, if the compensation, probably if I went into this condition, I go into this condition and I'm saying like compensation has to be a specific. So I've created a calculated field, and let's say it's this one, this medium compensation. I'm looking and I'm saying when I'm creating this calculated field, it's looking for compensation and it's looking between specific values. If it's between 50 to 150, I'm saying that's medium comp. So now I'm yet building another calculated field, this one, and saying the text constant is medium. So if this returns 50 to 150 and that's true, because this is true or false, it's a Boolean, then return medium. So that's what this conditional thing is doing. You get to build these conditions and you end up using other calculated fields, and then it goes ahead and it goes through it, and it'll like depending on how you come up with these conditions. So over here, this is compensation. It's looking at specific salary ranges in each one of these. So for this one, if it's a high comp, it's anything above 150 compensation, anything under above 150 return true. If this is true, then I'm saying that return this text constant, which this calculated field will just say high. So that's how this evaluate expression one works. Oh, and then I think I'm moving on to another one. So the other one that I kind of touched on, another one that I've seen used is formatting a date, right? Like every system wants the dates a specific way. Every region sometimes wants the dates a specific way. So over here, all I'm doing is I've given a calculated field name, which is CF, so meaning calculated field. You could come up with your own nomenclature. I'm saying that I'm using the hire date and format. So this is the name that I came up with. And I'm using the worker business object since this report field is on the worker business object, so hire date. And I'm saying the format that I want is I want to mask the format. So over here, if you went to this, and let me see if I could do that so I could show you where field, hire date, and then over here, I can, so, I could pull specific data out of the data itself from what Workday has delivered, or I want it to be a specific format. So if I click on this, I'm hovering, it's not showing. But generally when you're hovering, I'm not sure why it's not doing it over there, but it should tell you what the valid values are. Maybe it's because I didn't start typing. Let me start typing. Probably the person that designed it probably didn't know the industry standard at the time. What is the like? I guess I don't even know. Substring text, right? Like sometimes Workday adds more information. Like over here, this example that I pulled is the marital status might include the place, the specific location. So Republic of Korea over here. But in my report, I really don't care about like the location or something. Maybe that's being pulled in a different field and I don't want it to show over here. So I can go ahead and use create calculated field, use substring text, and then I say which specific field. So over here, I chose marital status. And I'm just saying, go ahead and show me anything before this open parentheses. That's what I want. Anything after, I want it removed. So that's what you're doing over here. Substring type you want before this delimiter, and then go in the backward direction from this delimiter. So that's all that is. We talked about this already. Okay, so how we were talking about earlier, like if you create a calculated field on a specific object, it's available there. But there may be times where you kind of need this calculated field in a lot of different reports using a lot of different business objects. You can go ahead and make them global. The only thing is you want to make sure that you don't make everything global because then it'll be hard. Like it'll just get it'll be harder to maintain and get at the data that you want.